everyone, I'm Rachel here with Ari, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. This week, we're on episode 226, and we're asking, what can we learn from newer writers? Before we dive into the topic, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening if you haven't already. And if you enjoy the show, please share it with friends and feel free to write a review. So what can we learn from newer writers? I don't really think I need to explain this question too much. It's just, you know how when you're a writer, you're always Googling things and researching and figure out, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I think I can speak for many people, if not all, that when you do try to look up how to do something specific in your novel, you look to writers that have a high following on their social media, or they're like a best-selling author, or they have like a ton of comments on their blog. But you don't always need to seek answers from authors or writers who have been writing for 25 plus years or have, 50 plus books under their belt. You can talk to anybody who's a writer, no matter how long, how short, whether they're published, unpublished, because everybody does things in their own way. And we all have a unique voice. We have a unique writing journey. And I think it's important to remember that, because even when you've been writing for such a long time, you may think you know everything, but there's always something new to learn. And you can absolutely do that from writers who haven't been writing as long as you. So one thing you can learn from newer writers is just the fact that ignorance can actually be bliss sometimes, because too much knowledge can cause decision paralysis. Newer writers are still exploring how they want to outline, if they want to outline, etc. Veteran writers, I feel like you already know how to do that. You have your formula figured out for your creative writing process, that you tend to do the same thing for every single book. So when you get stuck on your next project, you stop and you scratch your head and you're like, oh, wait, this isn't working this time. What can I do? Now, because of this, you can learn from a newer writer on how they work on their manuscript and apply that to your own work, similar to when they ask you for advice. And I'll use my cousin Catherine for an example for this. She recently started writing her own book, and my sister and I, we go to a coffee shop every week and we write together. And because my sister and I have been writing for years and years, she asked me one day, how do you outline? How do you keep track of your notes? What exactly do you do? And I told her, this is the way I do things. I said, but this isn't necessarily going to work for you. One of those reasons is we work differently, but also she's writing a fantasy book. I write mystery. And she couldn't decide what POV she wanted to use for her book, because she has a male protagonist and a female protagonist. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know that my mystery novel has gone through many draft changes because I didn't know what POV to use for with my characters. I wrote draft 1 in the male first-person POV, and then I rewrote draft 1 in third-person male POV, and then rewrote it again with the first-person point of view of the female character, and then finally settled on third-person for her. So that's 4 drafts right there, all written completely differently. And you know what my cousin's doing? She outlined her book, and she just did bullet points of first this happens and that happens. That's how she outlined her book. And she even wrote some of the scenes that she had inside of her head. And she wrote each scene twice, and she wrote the outline twice, just the bullets, as if from we're following her male protagonist and then following her female protagonist. And she's going to figure out which outline she likes better and which story she wants to follow. And I'm like, you know what? That could have saved me like 2 years with my manuscript if I just did a bare bones bullet list in their own point of views. And just, it's just one of those things that even though she's only been writing for, at the time this podcast comes out, probably like a year or so, and I've been doing it since I was 10, that's actually what gave me the idea for this episode.
I love that. I love it when it's like, yeah, someone comes along and does something so much easier. Like, wow, wish I could have figured that one out myself.
Right? It's so frustrating. And you feel dumb. after a
You do,
while.
but it's like, everyone learns in their own different way. I'm sure she'll fall down a hole that we didn't, Not that we're wanting her to. We want her to be able to do everything, but yeah, we all fall down our own little holes. If we're talking about like, yeah, newer writers, when I was a new writer back in the day, this was before the internet was like a big thing. It was like when not every household had the internet. That's how old I am. One of the things was I didn't know there was such a thing as an outline. When I started writing, I liked reading books, I like stories, I like structure, and I just started writing. And I wrote with pad and pen because we didn't have a computer in the house. And then I moved to a typewriter and then eventually a computer. But there was no internet to check and see what other people wrote, unless you like found a magazine that talked about some author, some like, you know, best-selling author and what they did. You just didn't know. It wasn't common knowledge if you were like like I said, 8, 9, 10-year-old or even a teenager. It wasn't this, oh yeah, you're a pantser or a plotter or a plant. These words were unheard of back then. So I didn't use an outline because I didn't know that that was a thing. And I just wrote and I discovered as I went and I made questions all the time. And that's why I wrote in scenes, because I was aware that I was chopping and changing and pulling papers out and moving them around. And I still write in scenes. I do use an outline now, but I still write in scenes. And there was something freeing when I look back at how much I used to get done. And yes, I appreciate as a child and a teenager, I didn't have the same level of chores and responsibilities and errands and life crap that you get as you're an adult. But just the freedom of just la la la, just going along, writing what I wanted without having that, oh, there's outlines, right? There's this many different ways to do an outline. And oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I do use outlines now, and I have tried many different methods until I found the one that worked for me. But honestly, that was very tiring. And sometimes you just got frustrated because even if you tried to follow a method that seemed to work, it didn't fully work. So while I do have a method, it's a bit of an amalgamation of like 2 other methods. And I think if I'd have known about outlining back then, I may have just got myself into this like circle of like, oh, which one's the best? And I may have stopped because I would have got like I said, decision paralysis and always wondering, is this other one better? Should I try that one first? Whereas if you don't know something, you just head on straight and just do it. And I got so many stories finished when I was younger because I wasn't bogged down with outlines. I'm not saying they were great, and I'm not saying that if I looked back at them now and put a structure in place, I'd be like, wow, there's some issues. But they had beginning, middle, end, and they worked. Not perfectly, but they did work. Now I'm not so sure with my outline because I'm always messing with it. But yeah, I do miss the strange freedom you get when you're a new writer and it's all just like new. And I appreciate this doesn't mean new as in like you're young and everything. Because obviously if you're a new writer now and you have the internet, you know all these things, you may still get decision paralysis. But if you're unaware and you have that ignorance is bliss because you're not in the writer community and you're just starting, oh yeah, I would love to have that again. Seriously.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. I kind of miss that too, because I have tried many different outlining methods myself. And I mean, that's part of the process. You kind of need to figure out what works best for you. And also you'll have to adapt depending on your projects. And I created a template for my mystery novel on Scrivener. So when my cousin asked me how I outline and things like that, I showed her that. And I was like, not all this is going to pertain to you, but here's some of the information that you might want to think about for your book. Obviously, list of characters, list of places, yada, yada, yada. And she looked at my template and she was like, yeah, that's too much work. I'm just going to do a bullet list. And I was like, go for it. That's a form of outlining too. Like, do whatever you feel like you need to do to get your thoughts down. And there's nothing wrong with that. But kind of with that in mind, newer writers, they do have an eagerness to learn because when they're first starting their books, they do want to seek advice from other writers. And as a seasoned writer, it's easy to get caught in the I know it all, I'm an expert mindset. And newer writers tend to keep more of an open mind. I'm not saying that, depending on how long you've been writing, you don't keep an open mind, but it's very easy for us to get set in our ways and we just kind of go through the motions. Whereas newer writers, they are actively seeking out new and fresh and different ways to go about writing their novel. And they're always open to new ideas, and they're actually like seeing the world around them, because we all have too many ideas. Let's be real here. So we kind of stop looking for ideas after a while. And I feel like newer writers, they see something and they're like, that could be a book idea. Whereas like us, we're like, no, I don't want to see it. I have too many ideas. That very well could be a book idea, but leave it for somebody else. I can't right now. And it just, I don't know. It's like this weird cycle that the longer you're in the game, you figure out the rules and then you stick to those rules. And newer writers, I feel like they just throw in house rules after a little while.
No, I get that. I think not even just for writing, other things, the older I get, the longer I do stuff, the more if someone says, oh, have you tried this? Or what about this new thing? It's like, you know what? No, I don't want to learn anything new. I am tired of finding out new things. It's like every time social media changes and there's an algorithm change and someone's like, here, learn all these 50 new things you need to know about Instagram. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just not interested anymore. And I think that can happen with writing. Obviously, there's not like new things coming out, but well, I suppose there is in marketing. But yeah, you do kind of get a bit like, you know what, I've read books about this stuff. I don't want to read any more books about it. I just want to get the writing done and I'm tired. But that's just me in general, to be honest. But yeah, I think someone newer does have that excitement, and it's like anything, it's like it's the eagerness, as you said, to learn. We lose that the longer we're in it. We become a little bit, what's the word? Not melancholy. Like, not like, I can't think of the word, so you might have to
Bitter.
cut all this out. Woo! Like almost like defeated, like we like we'll just accept it. We're just, you know, like fine, we'll just accept this is the way. I don't want to have to do anything new. Whereas when you're young and you enjoy it, not even young, sorry, when you're new to something, it is exciting. When you're learning something or trying something new at the beginning, the excitement is there. You know, the first time you pick up a guitar, the first time you put skates on, the first time you start playing football, the first time you do gymnastics, the first time you paint, it's all like, yes, it's crap because it is, but it's still great. And there's this, you know, the increase of ability goes up. And then as you get better, you plateau. If you've ever done like weight training or gym, if you've been at the gym, you know that the increase as you do it, it's very hard at the beginning, but the gains are quite quick if you stick to it. And then you reach a point and you plateau and it's harder to get gains. It's like that. It's harder to get, you know, you'll start off rubbish because we all start off rubbish, and then you get better and better and better. And eventually you plateau and it's like, oh, it's harder to get better. You still can, it just takes more effort. I think that's it. And we don't have that eagerness. We're tired. We are, or just me. I don't know.
No, it's not just you. I'm the same way. And I really liked how you explained that, because you get on this high. When you start something new, it's all you can think about all the time. And you go up, 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 and then you plateau. And then after a little while, I don't want to say it becomes a chore. I mean, in some cases it can be. Some days it certainly feels like a chore, especially if you're the type of person that has to write every single day or write a certain amount of words a week or whatever. It very well can feel like a chore some days. With that said, here's a fun little segue. My final point with newer writers is that they have patience, because yeah, you get on that high and you really want to continuously improve and you're excited about it, but they go at their own pace. And I feel like veteran writers, this day and age, everybody seems to be trying to churn out like 6 books a year. And I understand that writing to market is a thing. And if that works for you, great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And if you're able to churn out multiple books in one year, fine. Again, you got to do what's good for you. But when newer writers, when they get a book idea, that's their only focus. And they work on it meticulously and they try to figure out ways on how to make it the best they can possibly be. And sure, they may say, oh, I can't wait to finish this. I really hope that it doesn't take me longer than a year or two, because I know this writer, you know, not naming any names, but Rachel's been working on hers for like over 10 years. I really hope that doesn't happen to me. But they still just stick to their guns and they set out to finish what they originally started. And whether or not they do finish it, or no matter how long it takes them to finish it, like that's on them. But especially in the beginning, they have that patience that they're they just have that focus on that one project and they just roll with it.
Yeah, I think it's because when they're working on it, as you said, there's so much excitement with it. It's just it's all that they want to do. Whereas, well, because we overthink, we overplan, we're constantly thinking of all the extra things. Because I remember when I started writing, I didn't think about really important story structure or pacing. I didn't think about what sort of characters I would have, or that I needed to consider diversity in my characters, or location and who would be in those locations, or anything like that. That's all stuff you learn later. When you're just writing at the beginning, you're just writing. It's exciting and fun. And I even remember staying. I say this as with a laugh. I remember staying and finishing story after story when I was younger. I can't do that now because I have to bounce between everyone, because as soon as I hit a block, I go, oh, I'm stuck. I need to think about it. I'll bounce to another story. When I started, I would stick to one story at a time and just get through it. And I miss that. And I'm going to just tack on an extra one: fearlessness. I know it's a bit weird, because I know there are new writers who are probably feeling quite a lot of doubt and everything, but honestly, there is a sense of fearlessness when you just start out. It's almost like, yeah, I'm going to write this story. It's going to be a bestseller. It's going to be taken on by a movie, and you can have these really wild thoughts like, yeah, I'm going to write it, finish it, send it to a publisher. They're going to take it on. It's going to do great. I'm going to be a millionaire. Going to get a movie. And while it's a little bit, I'm not going to say delusional, but a little bit, there is something enjoyable about having that level of fearlessness and belief in yourself that what you write, because you love that story, you love it so much that it could do that. And yet you get older, you're in the writing community for a long time, you're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So yeah, I want that back as well. Fearlessness.
It's the confidence, isn't it? Because that brings up, I mean, that's an excellent point. My cousin, when she finishes writing a few pages in her notebook of her outline, she asks me to read it. And she's not asking for my feedback. She's like, look at this idea I just had today. And she gets super excited about it and she wants to talk about it. And then on the ride home from the coffee shop, she is chit-chatting away in the back seat and going on and on about what she wrote that day. And it's amazing because I don't talk about my stories that often anymore. I used to. When I was younger, I would come up with a new idea. My sister and I, we would talk for hours, bouncing ideas off of each other. Now I write something and I'm like, it's not ready. Nobody's allowed to look. Do not even ask me what I'm writing about because I don't even know. I can't tell you. And, it's just, yeah. Man, we're old. Not like old, but I mean like just the idea, like, our writing careers are old and we're old farts.
It's just what you said about like the eagerness to talk about it. I remember that I would write stories and then show them the teacher. I would show them my family. I would show them friends. Obviously, that was what stopped me from doing it, because you'd get feedback that you didn't ask for. You just wanted to show them, like, look what I did, and then you'd get feedback you didn't ask for, and they would just crush you, and you'd stop showing them. But I love this. I had a friend I was talking to online for years, and we would literally just send long emails with stories attached to them back and forward. And if they were like, what's your new idea? And you just blurt it all out. Now it's like you try to come up with a pitch line, or even if you're just having to explain what your story's about, and you get like 2 lines in and you're like, actually, it doesn't sound that good. And it's like people are going, no, it's quite good. I want to hear more. No, it doesn't. Again, confidence. Because you just want to share it when you're starting, because it sounds like the best idea ever. And then you get older and you get stronger ideas, and for some reason we start thinking they're worse. And I don't know where that's come from.
I don't know, but you know what? I think that is excellent words of wisdom from Ari to end the episode on, because really everybody just take a page out of a newer writer's book. No pun intended, but I'm going to leave that in. So with all that said, we're going to turn it over to you guys. What advice would you ask a newer writer? And is there anything that you've already learned from a newer writer that we didn't talk about today? Let us know your answers in the comments so we can chat about it. Remember, we release a new episode every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing our pet peeves with books. So to ensure you don't miss it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your way out. As always, thank you for listening to the My Writer podcast. We'll see you guys next week. This podcast is brought to you by Writer's Block. We hate our brains. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.